What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today for you I got just a quick video talking about some of the complaints I've got so far from what we've seen in the Gotham Knights gameplay. Let's get into it. Alright, so number one would be the city and how empty it looks. You know, from the jump we knew this Gotham City would have been the biggest in any video game we've seen so far, even any of the 4 Arkham games that we've had in the past. You know, so from what we've seen in the gameplay, there doesn't seem to be much going on other than like a few pedestrians here and there and some crimes that would show up, you know, randomly around the city. And other than that, honestly, the city's big, but it doesn't really seem populated, you know, even compared to like something like the Spider-Man games. You know, the city doesn't really seem alive. The city's big, it has a lot to explore, but other than that, it seems pretty empty, which, you know, kind of sucks, because I was hoping we would get some funny interactions with the civilians, you know. But, you know, it doesn't seem like, it seems like we'll still have some of that, you know, from what I've seen in the gameplay. We've seen some civilian reactions to the Knights, you know, around the city, but other than that, it doesn't seem too much, too populated, too dense. Alright, number 2 would be the combat. You know, from a lot of the reviews I've seen and just people in general in the comments reacting to the gameplay, the combat doesn't seem very fluid, or it doesn't seem, how would I put it, I guess you could just say it's kind of bland. That's what a lot of people said. You know, it doesn't seem like, I'm going to compare it to Arkham games because that's what everybody's doing. So it doesn't really seem like there's much variety in the combat apart from the knights, the characters themselves. You know, they all have different fighting styles, but in terms of like gadget use and different combos you could do, it doesn't really seem too in-depth, you know, which is kind of a step down from the Arkham games. Like, if you remember, if you played them, you know that Batman had like a whole arsenal full of gadgets, and while you were fighting, you were able to use those in like quick succession. You know, you could, like, say you had the batarangs. You were fighting somebody, you were fighting a group of people, you could just keep continuing to tap L2, use those batarangs, you know, as much as you wanted. But in this game, it doesn't really seem like much of that. Like, it doesn't really seem like much of that is put to use. You know, I've seen a few clips where like Batgirl, she does use probably some batarangs. It seems like that. But other than that, I haven't seen anything else. I've seen the grapple she uses. It's like the kind of thing that Batman had in the Arkham games. She had that. But other than that, I mean, combat doesn't seem too in depth. It just kind of seems like a lot of punching, kicking, dodging, especially. And you had those special moves that everybody has, you know. But like I said, other than that, it doesn't really seem too in depth. So number 3 would be the enemies. So what we've seen in gameplay so far, the enemies don't seem to really attack you aggressively. You know, it kind of seems like you fight one enemy or fight 1 or 2 enemies, and then you wait for the other one to attack. You take out that enemy, then you got to run to the other enemy across the room. You know, like I said, I'm going to compare it to the Arkham games because that's what everybody else is doing. So if you play the Arkham games, you will know that those enemies did not give you a break. You will fight 1 or 2 enemies, then you have to counter an enemy that came to attack you, and then you got to go back to the enemy you were trying to fight, and then you have to go back to the enemy that attacked you before. You just, if you play them, you know what I'm saying. You know, it kind of seems like there's a lot of waiting for the enemies to attack, or you have to run to the enemy to attack, you know. So I feel like in that regard, the gameplay would be kind of slow. You know, it would just get kind of like boring because you have to wait for the enemies to attack you, kind of. You know, it's just, if the enemies were a little bit faster, a little more aggressive, I think they would definitely improve just the overall experience of the game, because, you know, you don't really want to just be waiting for enemies to attack you all the time. Speaking of the enemies, there don't really seem to be a lot of variety when it comes to the enemies, from what we've seen at least. You know, from what we've seen really was just a bunch of, you know, goons, thugs, and a few brutes. But other than that, it doesn't really seem like the character or the enemy variety is really there. You know, the Arkham games, which I was just gonna keep comparing to, they had a whole bunch of, like, they had the goons, of course, you know, just the goons that you could punch and kick, take them out real quick. Then they had the brutes. Then they had, you know, the brutes who had the knives on their arms or who had the swords. You know, the dudes with the shields, the dude with the shock sticks. You know, I can keep going because there was just that many. But you know, so far from what we've seen, it doesn't seem like there's that variety. You know, and also I don't want to speak too fast, but that's just from what I've seen. You know, they could be keeping it all a secret. You know, you don't want to show too much, but like, again, that's just from what I've seen. And I also want to say, you know, the variety of characters or the variety of enemies that you fight is important because it keeps the game fresh. You know, it keeps it from not getting stale and boring and just feeling like you're punching a bunch of thugs, same thugs over and over and over and over until the end of the game. You know, it just keeps the game fresh. You know. Oh yeah, and real quick, I just want to go back to the combat because I didn't mention how there's no counter in this game. You know, the whole counter system that was in the Arkham series, that's not in this game. And you know, a lot of people are they're just mad about it because they're like, why would you not bring that feature over to this game? And I agree because that feature just kind of kept the game fluid. You know, it kept the combat from not like stopping. You know, like I said, it comes back to the enemies of how they continue to attack you over and over. You know, they didn't give you a break. So with that, they will give you the option to counter the enemy's attack. You know, just counter, you punch that dude, go back to the usual fighting. You know, it just kind of kept the game fresh. It kept it fluid and consistent. You know, but with this taken out, combat just kind of like, it's just a bunch of jumping around, dodging, attack, and then dodge. You know, but yeah, it's a whole different game, so we shouldn't really complain too much because a lot of games don't have this whole counter system. Like, think of Spider-Man. It actually has a system similar to Spider-Man of how like he would perfect dodge and then attack. That's in this game too, but it doesn't seem as fluid as the Spider-Man games, but it's there. It seems like you can kind of connect your attacks with those, you know, so yeah. And lastly, my biggest complaint of all, which I recently just found out earlier today, the game will be locked off at 30 frames per second on console. Like, I can't believe out of everything that is my biggest complaint. You know, I've been so used to just games nowadays, especially new games on the new generation of consoles, just being locked, or not locked, just having that 60 FPS option, like automatically. You know, and especially with this game was supposed to come out on the older generation of consoles, PS4 and Xbox Xbox One, the Xbox One. And with them scrapping the release on the older generation consoles, you would assume that the new generation will be able to handle 60 FPS easy. But it seems that's not the case because apparently, from what I've seen, the whole untethered co-op and how big the world is, it hindered the ability for them to, I guess, have 60 FPS. So it's just locked at 30 now, and I guess PC will automatically from the jump have 60 FPS because, you know, you could always upgrade your PC and it doesn't really have a limit on what it can handle. But yeah, man, it just sucks it won't be able to run 60 FPS. Hopefully they drop a patch sooner rather than later that we'll be able to play, you know, on them crispy 60 FPSs. But I guess we gotta wait till then. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Hopefully this video gave you some clarification on whether or not you want to get the game or you still want to get the game. So I know a lot of people are on the fence about it. And yeah. See ya. Bro, he knows I'm here, man. He knows we're here.